So let's bring August and Jesse up here. Welcome.
Susan's back in the door. Well, thank you very much, Susan, for that kind introduction, and also to everybody at the American Humanist Association Conference for inviting us here and taking your time to come and see us present. So, and in case you're wondering, I'm August and he's Jesse, because we don't have our name tags on anymore, maybe you don't. So anyway, we both work for the Secular Student Alliance, and the way that we talked about the Secular Student Alliance in the past is as an umbrella organization for atheist, agnostic, and humanist groups on high schools and college campuses. But we've been thinking about this and trying to come up with a different metaphor because we do more than just protect campus groups from sun and rain. And we were thinking, you know, what would be a good metaphor? And I thought of a story. And the story informed our latest metaphor. So there's a man walking along the countryside, and he sees a woman tending a beautiful garden. And he goes up to the woman and he says, "Ma'am, the Lord has certainly blessed you with a beautiful garden." And the woman says, "Yes, but you should have seen it before I got here, and the Lord had it on its own." So we see ourselves as gardeners. We think that there is a background potential for students to organize atheist and humanist groups on their own, but that if we give them some assistance, pass around best resources, and talk about this at length, that we can really help them grow. And we have a track record of doing that. And we want to talk to you about that track record. We want to talk to you about some potential problems that we see coming up, and the way that we see forward in order to deal with those problems. And guess what? How you can get involved. So please enjoy as we tell you how we're growing our secular garden. And I guess I should also say that it's not just our secular garden. We think it's your secular garden too, and your secular student garden in particular. Something that Susan mentioned in her introductions was that Jesse and I have both graduated. We are no longer students. Frequently, I tell people I'm with the Secular Student Alliance. They say, "Oh, where do you go to school? What's your major?" I'm done with school, at least for now, and so is Jesse. And we are non-students who are gathering resources in order to help the student movement grow stronger. So we feel that it's really important for people of all ages to get behind the student movement, and we see ourselves as a trustworthy vehicle for taking resources from everybody who wants there to be a secular student movement and getting those resources employed on campuses.
So why campuses? There are a lot of different ways that people can help the movement. We're currently involved on campuses, and we think one of the reasons is because it's really fertile soil, to continue this metaphor, which you'll see we're continuing it at length throughout the conversation. If you want to have a voice in the council room, boardroom, courtroom of tomorrow, you want to have a voice in the classroom today. It can't be said enough that we need to start from the ground up. Infrastructure of the movement is really important, and I know it's cliche to say that the children are our future, but students really are important for building a future for the movement. As you see, this is when the students are most open-minded. This is when they're coming into contact with ideas for the first time. This is when they're most willing to engage with the ideas, and they're suddenly coming into contact with all these different people, all these different experiences, and this is when we think it's most important for them to have a good experience with secularism and to come into contact with the idea. They go on to become leaders. This is, if they become involved in the secular student movement early, then they keep that identity for life. You don't just have them for a few short years. They keep doing this. They go on to become politicians, doctors, lawyers, who are secular going forward. And it's really important because even if you're not a secular student, there are a lot of religious students and theistic students who are coming into contact with non-religious students for the first time on college campuses. We need them to understand who we are, why we believe what we believe, and that we're not terrible people, that we're part of the community, that we're part of society, and we need to be respected as such. So to have student representatives on campus, both for the secular students and for the theistic students, is really important. And it's low-hanging fruit. There's a lot of money in university funding that goes forward towards these religious groups. once they're organized. There can be a lot of university money going towards secular groups once they're organized. They're dying to give money towards funding projects. They're dying to bring in speakers for groups. And you know what? Religious groups have been taking real advantage of this. Hillel, Campus Crusade for Christ, InterVarsity get millions of dollars from university funding every year. We can tap that too once the groups are organized. And we're doing pretty well at it. Since we started, as you can see, in 2003, we had 42 groups. We've had a lot of growth, especially in the last couple of years. We're now up to 205 student groups around the country, and we even have some international groups. Some in England, one in Nepal, which I find interesting. But we consider ourselves pretty good at doing this. We're growing the movement, and when we tend the garden, we get a pretty high yield. We have experience, and we think these results are proven. We provide a lot of services. We're not going to go into exactly what we do. We can talk about that in Q&A. But as it is, we're just going to show you the results of our efforts.
And certainly the results of the students' efforts too. We don't mean to minimize that, but we certainly we see ourselves as facilitators, not as making all the difference ourselves. So we're very interested in working in partnerships at many levels. And as far as our services, in addition to talking about them in Q&A, if you're interested, we also have a brochure which details them. And you can go to our website, which is www.secularstudents.org, and check out all of our services listed there as well. So in addition to having this sort of broad system-wide growth, which, yes, we've been working very hard at trying to build up the student movement, but there's been a lot of other things going on at the same time, right? Like the Four Horsemen have published their books, and all sorts of other people have come out as atheists, and it's getting a little bit easier to be an out atheist. So it's definitely possible that we just happen to be along for the ride. And we think that a piece of evidence in the favor that we're actually capable of making a real difference if we focus on a particular area and focus on supporting growth in a really focused way is an experiment that we participated in with the very generous financial help of the humanist community of Silicon Valley. Thank you, I see several of you in the audience. And also the Bible Spark Foundation and the American Humanist Association. We embarked on what started as a one-year project, turned into a two-year project, to do focused campus organizing in Northern California. And over the course of the sort of 18 months where we actually had bodies on the ground, we went from starting off at the beginning of the period with 2 groups in the area to 13 at the end of the funding period. So 550% growth in that period versus 65% growth if you track our entire system of groups. So just in general, where we kind of paying generalized attention, doing what we could, not really traveling at all to go visit people, we had the 65% growth. When we actually took our campus organizer, who works in our office and who is working with students day to day, who knows all of the best practices that groups are doing, or maybe not all of them, but lots of them, and flew her out there to go share her enthusiasm and her knowledge with the groups that were forming and had formed on campuses in Northern California. We saw this amazing result. Yeah, it's possible it would have happened anyway, but we're pretty confident that this was causal. Another reason that we think it's causal is that we tried different models within that 2-year period that did not work very well at all. And we tried them in other locations too. We had part-time student organizers based in Northern California in this case, but we also had them in New York City and in Southern California doing organizing. They were not traveling around or talking to people all over the country via the web and phone. They were just focusing on their area. They did not have the expertise that our full-time campus organizer has. And their results were better than nothing, but not nearly as good as having a full-time paid person. So we feel that with the NorCal experiment, we have really found a model that we think is replicable, and at least we really want to test to see if it's replicable, and is a way forward for us to grow. So the thing is that growth for the sake of growth is not really necessarily a good thing. We want to grow smart, and we want to grow groups that are really excellent at reaching out and advancing our shared secular ideals. So to strain the metaphor more, because I know you all love a metaphor that's being beaten to death,
We do produce really great groups. The things that these groups are doing is incredible, not just for the enthusiasm, the energy, their creativity. We tend to focus on 4 different principles. First one is activism. We like to have the idea of them being involved both with others and within their community. So a lot of the groups are involved with GLBT activism, protesting their graduation prayers, because a lot of times their university has policies of prayer, and particularly sectarian prayer at graduation. But even outside of college, there's a great example at the University of North Carolina, Greensboro, where an alumni went and spoke to his local council about their practice of starting meetings with a prayer. And there's a YouTube video of it. It's really impressive. He's eloquent and explains well our position. And from what I hear from our people in contact with them, Hemet is telling me that they're going to send somebody from the group every week to speak at the beginning of this meeting until the policy is changed. Now, it might take a long time, but if nothing else, we are showing people that atheists are in the community, that we care, and that we want to be involved. These are the sort of leaders we're producing. Another really great example that we want to bring up is Evan Clark. Evan Clark is the student group leader at Cal Lutheran University. Now it says Lutheran, that's not just in the name. It really is proud of being a Lutheran university. And yet Evan Clark not only has the secular student club there, and he's the president, openly an atheist, ran for student body president, and he won. At a Lutheran college, we have an open atheist leading his group as the student body president, getting involved, making a difference, and making decisions. I mean, this is a big win. We're really proud of him. So, second principle we like to focus on is community, and that can mean a couple of different things. It is valuable in and of itself to provide a place for non-religious students to feel welcome, to feel that their questioning, that their doubts are not only accepted but celebrated and welcomed. For a lot of students, they grew up in very religious families, and to have a place where they are accepted makes a really big difference. But in the future of the movement, it makes a bigger difference as well, because for people considering leaving their faith, who want to become secular, want to promote a secular future, it's important for them to see that there's a place for them to land. They can't just jump out of their community, of their traditions. They need to see that there's something waiting for them, that they're not going to be alone. And providing this community visibly helps more people come out and helps build the secular future.
So another thing that we have the groups focus on, and we think that's important for the groups to work on, is education. And education manifests in a lot of different ways. There is education of the, I'll explain what Jesse's handing out here in a moment. So this could be education of the group itself. So say the group's interested in learning more about the laws around stem cell research. So they might invite a biology professor who uses stem cells in her work to come and speak to just their members and kind of let them know what the day-to-day realities are of trying to work with stem cells within the legal system that has been established to control those things. But the more kind of interesting part of the education prong is educating the outside community, letting them know that atheists are people too, what they believe, and atheist humanists. I apologize if you are near and dear to a particular label. I don't mean to judge that label or suggest that label is not important. I'm just sort of assuming we're all in this together. If atheist isn't your word, just pretend I'm saying your word. For the sake of this, later on we can have a in-depth conversation about the philosophical underpinnings. No, that's not okay. Jesse says not in this talk. Later on, when I'm not here, you can have that conversation. So anyway, educating the community. So that happens a lot of different ways. We definitely have worked with the Richard Dawkins Foundation to bring Richard Dawkins around to our campus groups. Help bring Christopher Hitchens to our groups. Dan Barker loves our groups with the Freedom from Religion Foundation. He actually is the individual who speaks to more of our groups than anybody else. He does between 20 and 30 a year, which is phenomenal. And he does that, by the way, at FFRF's expense. So that's really generous of them, and I'm really delighted to have them, in addition to Bible Spark Foundation, Humanists of Silicon Valley, and the AHA, really putting their money where their mouth is as far as supporting student involvement. So in addition to bringing in those big name speakers or even smaller name speakers to come and talk about what humanists and atheists and other non-theists believe, another thing that our groups do is that they set up tables. When Jesse led his student group, he'd set up an Ask an Atheist table. And lots of our groups love to do this. And one of the things that they were telling us, the resources they needed, were brochures. Because there are all sorts of brochures in this movement. If you go out in the tabling area, everybody's got a brochure. But if you look at those brochures, with very, very few exceptions, those brochures are about organizations. They're about, what is the American Humanist Association? What is the Secular Student Alliance? What is Camp Quest? They are not about what is an atheist. So, since there wasn't a resource already available within the movement, as it were, we decided to go ahead and make one. So we did, and that's the brochure you're looking at right now. And you're welcome to page through it, although I would like to remind you that Jesse and I are here now, and the brochure will be there later. So you might want to contemplate that. But anyway, so that's education. And then the last prong is service. So one of my favorite examples of this is a couple of our groups have, for the last 2 years, gone down to New Orleans over their spring break, and they've helped rebuild after Katrina damage. And what's really fascinating about this is not only are they going and being good without God, they are also going and doing this with Christian groups. They actually partner with Christian groups on campus that are going down already, and they go down together, and sometimes they ride in the same cars, they definitely stay in the same buildings, and they get to know each other. And it's good for everybody. They learn about us, and we learn about them. And everybody is enriched. So not only is the world being made a better place, this is the only world we have, so obviously it's important to us to make it better, but in addition to that, they're getting to know each other, and stereotypes are being broken down on both sides, which feels incredibly valuable. Another way that service plays in is political involvement, believe it or not. On Monday, I am going to the White House. I got invited, along with Greg Epstein. I'm getting invited by my favorite office at the White House, the Office of Faith-Based and Neighborhood Partnerships, to have a discussion about interfaith service projects on college and university campuses. So we don't have to be theoretical when we go to the White House and say, atheists really want to cooperate. Instead, we can be like, look, they're doing it. Kelly Baldwin's leading her service project at Harvard, and these groups from Ohio State and University of Illinois are going down to New Orleans with Christian groups. We're already doing this, and we want to do it more, and we're so happy to be part of it. So that is service.
So, as we produce all these groups, you'll notice that we're pretty efficient at it. We have one staff member for every 51 groups. It's kind of daunting, and yet we're accomplishing a lot, and we're getting some decent attention. I'm the communications director, so one of the things that particularly interests me is that we're getting mentions in the New York Times. We're on the front page of the Chicago Tribune magazine section, CNN.com, a lot of places, blogs, podcasts, some TV shows. We're getting attention even with our small staff. But so this is one staff for every 51 campus groups. Let's compare this to I think the phrase is cultural competitor, Campus Crusade for Christ. Does anybody have any guesses as to how many campus groups there are for every one staff member of Campus Crusade for Christ?
One to one.
So you're guessing 1 to 1. That seems to be the consensus. You're close. They have 3 staff for every one group that they're supporting. How can we compete with this at the level we are right now? We're doing it 1 to every 51. They have 3 staff for every group. Talk about fertile ground. We can really start monopolizing and capitalizing on the situation. So even with, there's a lot of room for growth because we are only on 3.4% of campuses. In the United States. I wager on every college group, every college campus, there is a Christian group or something like it. We need to raise that number from 3.4%. There's a lot of room for growth, but at the moment, we're very close to carrying capacity. With 51 groups being supported by, for every person in the office, we're going to have a lot of trouble moving forward, expanding that number from 3.4%. We're at carrying capacity. we're starting to be a little bit strained. The question then is how we in the office can make a difference in increasing the secular student movement's presence, and what you can do to help us.
So, based on our success from what we did with the NorCal experiment, we think that the best thing to do is to have a roving campus organizer. This would be somebody who would be based out of our office, but would spend half of their time on a plane going and visiting areas around the country. We think that a full-time person who is doing this could very reasonably be expected to serve 5 or 6 areas within a year and have plenty of time to visit those areas twice within the year and drive around to visit all the groups in those areas and to really not only support a great deal of growth of groups in those areas, because we definitely know how to get groups started, but also can really keep that attrition rate from getting too high. Can step in when groups are not doing so well, and maybe when groups are going through a leadership transition or something else is going on to cause a group to run into trouble. So we think that to support this position in terms of paying this person's salary so that they can eat, and paying to fly them around, and paying for the rental car, and paying for all the extra brochures and flyers and what have you that we need to be able to provide in order to support the new groups that such a roving campus organizer would need, would cost about $60,000 a year, above where our budget is right now at about $250,000 a year. And if you're able to get involved and support this, we would certainly appreciate it. And more than that, we think you would appreciate it. It goes to so many levels to improve the strength of the movement and the strength of, I think, our society to support this kind of work that we're doing. Yeah?
What does 5 or 6 areas mean? What does it
Okay,
mean?
that's an excellent question. I think areas basically means a 2-hour drive around an area. And I think there are certain areas that within a 2-hour drive are going to be way more, they're going to have more groups in them, frankly. So, obviously Northern California, extremely dense. Boston, maybe, might be a good place. And there's actually already some fantastic organizing going in Boston because we have the Harvard Humanist Chaplaincy there, which is an absolutely phenomenal organization and has done a great deal already. And we work with them a lot, and we are very, very proud to be partnering with them. And hey guys. Yeah, we think that to some extent it's already going on, but just imagine how effective a campus organizer could be who already was working with what was going on at Harvard. That relationship could be even stronger and even more fruitful. If you think that your local group might be interested in supporting one of these areas, and you think you might be able to figure out how to get the $10,000 or $12,000 a year, which is a lot of money, I realize, to support that kind of a thing, we would be delighted to come out to your group and talk with them and see, what questions they had. Please give us a call and let us know if you know of a foundation that might be interested. That would also be fantastic. And we realize it's a little crass to come to the AHA's conference and fundraise for ourselves. And we very much appreciate that, that we're allowed to do that. And the AHA has supported us for years in all sorts of different ways. And they are definitely committed to being great partners. We really appreciate that. But we do want to let people know what we need in order to grow, because what's going to happen with our 4 staff that we have now, if we're not able to grow, is that, we had the best year of growth ever in the last 12 months for the Secular Student Alliance. We added something like 60 new affiliates, compared to 30 in the last few years before that. And what's going to happen, and actually we're already starting to notice it happen a little bit, is that the attrition rate of those groups that are getting started is going to start to creep up. It's already creeping up, as I just said. And we're going to be less able to help those groups when they're in need, and less able to pass around best practices to keep them going. So we want to let you know what this very important part of the movement needs, or what we think it needs. Clearly, we want to hear what you guys think too. And that's all Jesse and I came here to say. We would love to have your questions and comments and ideas, and thank you very much.
We have had several campus groups start at Arizona State University, and our local group, the Humanist Society of Greater Phoenix, has had people try to work with them. People graduate, they move on, and the group fizzles every year. And then they have to find new leadership, and it seems like it's always starting over again. Has this been a problem, and how do you work with that?
Yeah, it's a problem. I think David, who's a group leader, wants to address that.
Yes, actually one of the best things about the Secular Student Alliance is they train the leadership. One of the best parts of the SSA conference was succession planning. And they have an hour-long discussion of that, and they also have workshops where they go through procedures of how exactly to pass along the leadership mantle, how to pass it on a bit early so it's not in the last quarter of a president's tenure that they're trying to get somebody to replace them. It's while they're still going to be there a couple more quarters, so that there can be somebody there that knows all of the ins and outs while the new president is getting their sea legs, as it were. And with the Secular Student Alliance, Liz Liddell and August, they are amazing at getting back to the SSA member groups whenever there are problems. I have no doubt that so long as they're kept going and as long as we keep them increasing in size, we're going to see those student groups all across the country continue and increase in number and in size.
Hemant, did you want to respond to
yeah.
that as well? Hemat's the chair of the board of directors for the Secular Student Alliance. And there's also several board members who are in the audience right now, or at least there was a minute ago. Joe Foley is here, and John Figueroa was here a moment ago. Am I missing any other board members? Anyway, Hemant, go ahead.
When I started my college campus group like several years ago, we didn't have anyone taking over after I left until the very last meeting of the year, and that's only because we scheduled like 2 extra meetings so we could find someone. And we've gotten very good at identifying that, you're right, that's a huge problem, but actually for the SSA, our attrition rate for groups dying off, that's something we specifically focused on, and that number has gotten lower over the past few years repeatedly, to the point where we know what the level is that groups die out at, and we can.
I have secret knowledge that Hemant doesn't have because the report hasn't gone out yet, but I've seen the draft. The rate started creeping back up, and I think it's because we're reaching our carrying capacity. Liz especially, and I, and Jesse, and our interns, and our czar of assistant campus organizing, that's our part-time guy. He wanted a different title, so anyway, he's a czar now. So anyway, we do our very best to get back to concerns, but we know that we're not getting back as quickly as we used to be able to when we had 150 groups. So it's kind of reality of where we're at. I didn't know if you were going to add more after that, Hemant.
I was just going to say, we know it's a problem and we know how to address it, but like August is saying, the issue is not like that we're ignoring it or that we don't know how to address it. We know how to address it. Now it's a manpower issue, and that's a separate issue altogether on our end. But I think, we know what it takes to get these groups aware that they got to find a successor, someone to take over after the leader graduates, things like that.
In the back on the left?
Well, my question would be, how do you start? How you're starting all of these groups? How do they start? How does a campus with no members become a campus with members?
Sure. So at every single institution of higher learning, Liberty College notwithstanding, there are atheists on campus. Probably there too. I almost guarantee. And Kevin Roos doesn't count. I don't know if you've read his book, but it's kind of hilarious. Anyway, there are students that have this identity, but to a lot of them, especially if they're really confident in that identity, it just fades into the background. Like, this is part of who they are, but they've never started a group about it until somebody suggests the idea. And back when we had 30, 40 groups, we would go to campuses and hang up flyers that say, hey, if you're interested in starting a secular student group at, whatever, Brigham Young, the Secular Student Alliance is around and we would really like to help you. Contact us at this email address and we'll help you get started. In the last couple of years, we've had so many people just finding us on the internet and requesting our group starting packet, which I'll explain in a sec, that we've, with the exception of that NorCal experiment, and even that is now done, finished in 2009, we don't go out and proselytize to new universities anymore. We're not able to. We don't have the resources to take away from the existing groups right now, and even if we did, we wouldn't want to accelerate the rate at which we're growing. Like, if you remember the title of the talk, it's Help, Help, the student movement is growing too fast. So we are in a position where we don't want to, well, we're not able to, where we're at right now with the amount of funding we have, to grow the movement anymore. But do we have a method to get groups started at campuses where there's not a group yet? Yeah, we have a method. It worked really well in the past, and it worked really well in NorCal, and we are very confident that we can do it again. Way in the back.
Yeah, so we're curious, when Jenny and I went to undergrad a while ago, our respective colleges required faculty sponsors for students.
Yep.
And, even around the DC area, I was hearing the same thing, is that sometimes faculty are too scared, I'll just call them cowardly, to come up and go, we'll sponsor a secular student. Is that still a problem now, or have you ever run into that? Because I know in my school, we didn't have any kind of secular student when I was a student.
It's easy to energize students, but the faculty's often another matter.
Right. Well, and I'm dominating things here, but if you, okay. But anyway, so we get that problem more frequently at high schools than at universities. At universities, especially if a professor has tenure, they don't care. I have heard of non-tenured professors being like, oh, maybe you need to go find somebody who has tenure. And unfortunately, tenure is kind of in the process of dying, so that may complicate things. But yeah, we do see that problem in high schools. We created a brochure, which I don't think we have with us right in this room, but we definitely have them out at our booth over in the hallway, over with all the other booths. And it's about non-theists in your high school. And it explains that the non-theist group does not want to get together to worship the devil or to, punch the Christian students or anything like that. They want to have conversations. They want to have intellectually rigorous conversations. They're interested in exploring exploring their world in an intellectually fulfilling kind of way, and that they are in fact, to a very large extent, embracing and advancing the very ideals that that education as sort of an institution wants to advance. The idea that we should have evidence before we make decisions, the idea that we should think analytically about problems. Those sorts of values are shared with the educational institution, and this group is actually a good thing, in addition to the fact that, by the way, these students have just as much of a right to organize as the Christian Student Fellowship or whatever it may be. So we work both of those angles. That said, out of our 205 groups, 6 of them are high school groups, and I don't see the number skyrocketing anytime soon because it's still a really hard struggle, and to the best of my knowledge, nobody has yet been persuaded by our brochure, which I probably should not tell you, and probably will be admonished for telling you by many people on my board and what have you. But that's where we're at, and if you have ideas for how to make it better, we'd love to have them. George.
Haven't you also used or allied with local humanist or free thought groups to start these organizations, your group?
Yes, we have.
Yeah.
Back when we were trying to furiously start groups before we overwhelmed ourselves and got overwhelmed, yeah, we definitely did. We would, and I know that several local groups would be like, oh, we'd really love for there to be a group, at this campus down the road, and we would send them a group starting packet, which I mentioned earlier and I never followed up on. So the group starting packet, it has one of our group running guides, which it's in my backpack. If you want to get it out and hand it around, Jesse. Just hunt through all the pockets, but it's in there, I swear. It's a book that basically explains how to start and run a campus group, and we revise it every single summer. It's always a summer intern project to revise it, keep it up to date and interesting. In addition to that, it comes with 100 already printed on neon paper flyers that advertise the group. We create an email address that forwards to the person that requested the packet. We create a Facebook group that we make the person that requested the packet and admin. And by the way, Facebook has been amazing for us. It is so much easier to find fellow atheists or fellow horticulturalists or fellow whatever, type in the search string, at your university now thanks to Facebook. So we really help students use that a lot and use it ourselves. So we start a Facebook group and we create a lot of other things to help them get a group started. We even include a packet of thumbtacks. So they don't need to go to the CVS. They don't need to go and steal thumbtacks from the student office they work at. Not that they do that. They've got the thumbtacks. We're all about reducing barriers to action. That is the core of our philosophy of engaging in activism. So
actually,
oh yeah.
During the introduction, you made the joke that there aren't as many atheists in North Carolina. My experience is that in the more religious climates, the groups are more active because the atheist students feel more under siege. They need to find others like them, whereas in more accepting climates, it doesn't happen as much. That said, when I was at school, the group was not terribly active, and we had some trouble running meetings, finding enough members, and after I graduated, the group died. A year went by, I came, I believe I was in the Secular Coalition, now I'm with the Secular Student Alliance, and one of the reasons I really love working with the Secular Student Alliance is watching a year after I graduate, somebody else started a group at the University of North Carolina, affiliated with the Secular Student Alliance, and it's thriving. They're doing a great job, lots of events, lots of members, and I think a lot of the reason is because of this group running guide, because I had no clue what I was doing. And if I had a resource like that, I would have had a much better sense of how to keep groups running. The succession planning wouldn't have been a big problem. It really is an example in a very personal way for me about why the Secular Student Alliance helps.
Jeans jacket, you've had your hand up forever.
Thank you so much. I'm James. I'm here representing the Humanist Chaplaincy at Harvard, and I'm a vice chair of the Harvard Humanist Graduate Community. And I'm blogging this conference for the new humanism.org online magazine, so please visit that. You spoke about activism, community, education, and service, and I think those are all fantastic. But what about scholarship? That's what people go to universities to do, and I think this is a particularly important thing to involve graduate students in. And I'll give you an example. Next week, I'm going to Bryn Mawr College for a week-long seminar on scholarship and a free society that's being hosted by something called the Institute for Humane Studies. Now that's essentially a libertarian think tank. And they're paying for me to spend a week to take seminars, they pay for my food, my lodging, they help me find faculty positions, they put me in touch with important professors, and all because they want people to write articles about libertarianism and be libertarians on the public stage, as it were. And I'm not even a libertarian, so they've got no chance with me. But they are investing a lot in my academic development, because they understand that scholarship by high-profile, high-caliber graduates is capable of moving the thought agenda forward. So where is scholarship in your second student picture?
You're in. And I don't know you well, so please don't take this as at all insulting when I say this, but as far as your involvement goes, you go, girl.
No, I'm not insulted.
Okay, good. Anyway, yeah, so I mean, we're not anti-scholarship. To some extent, we see, as I was kind of mentioning earlier, the values of the Enlightenment, which we're trying to advance. Our secret motto is mobilizing students for the new Enlightenment, which no one understands or gets or anything, but whatever, which is why it's secret. So, those ideals are the same ideals of the academy, essentially, all those values that I mentioned a moment ago about, free exploration of ideas, evidence, rigor, and, to some extent, we figure the students are already there, they're already engaged, and some of them are doing things like studying the brain and trying to find out the underpinnings of religion. And there are definitely lots of scholars who are looking into these sorts of things who are graduate students now. And there's, in fact, a graduate student and a professor that work together. Their names are escaping me. Anyway, they do research on diversity on college campuses. Goodman and Mueller, I think? Yeah, that's it. And the research they do is on the extent to which atheists are even considered in terms of college diversity? And the answer is that, at least up until recently, they pretty much weren't. And they're starting to be, and they published some papers in the journal of their discipline, or at least one paper about that in particular. And you know, so there's a little bit, but it is, I mean, we are so very, very much at the beginning of this journey. And we would love to branch out, and you know, scholarship should be involved. We'll, I guess, you know, right now it spells what, aces, right? So we need to change the mnemonic somehow. But anyway, I mean, so keep doing it. Let other people know you're doing it. Let us know you're doing it so that we can put it in our newsletter. Let him at Meta know so he can put it in friendlyatheist.com and all these things. Okay, in the denim skirt.
Hi, my name is Chris Turner, and I'm a secondary high school history teacher in Phoenix, Arizona. And I was wondering, who is the contact person to ask questions to or glean information from on sponsoring a club on a high school?
Liz Liddell is your contact.
Is she here today?
No, she had, and were people clapping for Liz? Is that you should. She's freaking amazing. One of our board members, before she became a board member, blogged that she was blogging about famous women in the atheist movement, and Liz was on her list, and the quote was, somehow manages to support hundreds of student groups without exploding. And it's true. But Liz had a appendectomy very recently. She's fine, but she was going to come out here and help give the talk, but she wasn't thinking that was like the best idea for her speedy recovery, and we agreed. So Jessie came instead. And so anyway, she's the best contact person, but I can give you my card and Jessie's card. Like, we just got a new PBX phone system. We can transfer calls to each other now. It's very exciting. Before we had to hand the phone over. Yeah, so you can call us.
Is there information on the secular website?
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah. Oh, in front in green.
Yeah, one of the critical things that you have to worry about when you're starting an organization is the name, and having a name that will attract people. What are some of the kinds of names you've been using for your organization?
Okay, so David needs to tell you the name of his organization.
Okay, but the group that I started at De Anza College is acronymed to DAM, and it's Doubters, Agnostics, Mythbusters, and Non-Theists. And I have had dozens of students come up to me and say that they heard about us from word of mouth because nobody can believe we actually got that name. And it's wonderful. And I keep getting people on the Facebook group for DAM saying, I'm so glad to know you guys exist. Let me know when the meetings are. And so I can send them back a comment saying 3 to 4 L75 on Wednesdays. And we have got this extraordinary growth. We only started in the fall quarter of last year. It's spring quarter, 2 quarters later. And we are up from 15 to 54 people on the Facebook. We have 130 people on our email list. And for events, whether it be our every Monday movies, Cosmos was one of the recent ones, to things like a Halloween party or alternate religion day. We have so many people coming out to our events, and so many people that stop to say, I'm so glad to know you're here. Even the ones that don't come to our meetings come and join us for the events, or just tell us that they're glad to know we exist.
So, and our groups have all sorts of creativity and coming up with all sorts of different names. And something that I should make clear is that we do not rule the groups with an iron fist. We don't even control them. Yeah, they are autonomous organizations. We have something we call our minimum statement, which says they need to be naturalistic and they need to be civil rights minded and not discriminatory. And if they meet that minimum statement, then they're welcome to affiliate. And we don't run them. We just give them suggestions. We do not modify the genetics of the plants. We simply garden. So that is. So we let them pick their own names, of course, and they get to pick their own everything. That said, something that we have started recently, and something that actually was him at Meta's idea, that a possible value that we could add for local groups is the use of our name. Because it is this, it's not as well known as ACLU, but it's still better known than a lot of the names that the groups are just going to pick at random. And so we feel that it's a benefit to them to be able to call themselves Secular Student Alliance at California Lutheran University, or whatever it may be. And right now we've got a little bit over 20 groups that are using our name, and we hope to see more do it. We found the groups that already exist and have a name are pretty reluctant to give up their name, which is fine by us. But new groups are pretty excited about it, and we think it helps them. So that's part of the naming with the hat.
Yesterday we had an all-day seminar where people were giving papers, so we do have people writing papers. There was one young lady named Christine who came down from Alberta and gave her a paper. So this is already in existence, and we want to get it going in next year's Humanist conference, so you can integrate it with that group of people. There's a bunch of people here who probably were there yesterday. So
that would be fantastic. We would love to know more about that. And also, talking about integrating, if you, at the end of this conference, you're like, wow, I'm really fired up. I want to go do things, and I feel great. And you want to go to another conference, and you don't want to wait a whole year, you don't have to. You can go to our conference, which is at The Ohio State University. It is July 23rd through the 25th. And non-students are very, very welcome. We had a leadership summit in Northern California, actually hosted at Stanford. Thank you very much, Joe. And lots of non-students came, and they got a lot out of it, they told us. And we are able to pass along resources. It turns out that there are differences between running a non-campus and off-campus group, but there's also a lot of similarities, which I have a feeling Sharon wants to tell us about.
I was just gonna be one of those obnoxious comment, not question people, and just chime in. I run the Humanist Community of Central Ohio, and I've been to the SSA's conference a number of times. If you're really interested as a group leader in a lot of practical advice and practical things you can do to better your own group, a lot is really applicable to off-campus groups as well. I highly recommend reading the group running guide to the SSA. A lot also totally applicable. So if you want help in that direction.
It's also cheap. Anyway, Susan.
Yeah, the Council for Secular Humanism, or the Center for Inquiry, or whatever they're calling themselves, claims that they have numerous groups on campus. They call it CFI on campus.
Yep.
Do you work with them, or
Yes.
ignore them, or?
Okay, so full disclosure, yes, there's a history of rivalry. That said, things are getting way better. For our, let's see here, our last conference and the 2 leadership summits, we had one at Stanford in February and one at Harvard in March. We had CFI representatives. Debbie Goddard, who's their campus organizer, came to our conference last year and came to our Harvard event. She broke her leg and wasn't able to go to our Stanford event, but we had another one of their volunteers come up and participate in that conference. So, and Jesse's looking into talking at their conference. So, there's way more collegiality and cross-pollination than there ever was before. We look forward to having more of that. We're on tape, so I'm not going to commentate about why they might be maybe more cooperative than they were in the past, but they're very cooperative now.
Yeah.
We are delighted to have them as partners, just as we have partnered with AHA and IHS and the giant alphabet soup of organizations, which, by the way, the back of our atheist brochure, you may notice that we mention pretty much all the ones that we thought were national in scope and that we could think of.
My second half of that question is, are any of the campus groups dual affiliated?
The vast majority are dual affiliated. And they're on the back of, well, I know the Center for Inquiry is on the back. I think the Center for Inquiry is on the back of the brochure. I know in our group running guide, there's a list of resources, and we list the Center for Inquiry on campus. We talk about them, they talk about us. We work together on several Richard Dawkins tours, things are definitely heading in a very positive, excellent direction. Okay.
Yeah, another alliance that I would like to see grow in everyone's consciousness and in reality is an alliance between university chaplains and student secular groups. I'm the university chaplain at Rutgers University, humanist chaplain at Rutgers University. We just started our 2nd year there, and some of the students have expressed an interest in forming their own student organization, and I've given them, your information and Debbie Goddard's information, and that really, it has great promise in establishing continuity when students graduate. and also support from faculty, and also creation of faculty groups that are maybe humanist faculty groups, and alumni who may be interested in forming humanist alumni groups. So all those, which are much more long running, or can be more long running and more permanent. And as students graduate and go out into the world, start their own families, then they're going to be the ones that are the alumni of the institution. They're going to be the ones that are founding and joining humanist organizations all over the place. So that's a kind of an alliance that I really would like to see grow and prosper.
Yeah, we would absolutely love to see that alliance grow and prosper.
And what we need is more chaplains too. There are about 3 that I know
and
of.
we'd love to see more chaplains spring up. Well, it's growing though. I know Sharon Moss just got chaplainized at the Ohio State University. So that's very new though. She's still okay. Never mind. If you're watching at home, I just lied.
What about Joe Foley? Shouldn't Joe Foley say something about Stanford?
What do you want to say about Stanford, Joe Foley?
Oh, okay, so we don't have a chaplain, but we've actually become a member of the Stanford Associated Religions with a memorandum of understanding. It's a long story, but actually we've been really involved with the Dean for Religious Life at Stanford University.
Who spoke at our leadership summit.
Yeah, he spoke at the SSA Summit. He's really supportive of our group. I think he gets along a lot better with us than he does with many of the religious groups, honestly. So we've been working very well with our university's existing infrastructure on religious activities, and I think a few other student groups around the country have been looking in that direction too.
What about money?
You don't have it, do you?
I thought you were getting some money through that alliance. And then, didn't you get some money from the...
Oh yeah, we got to use the church for free.
Yeah, universities don't support religious organizations. At least state universities do not.
That is not always true. Yeah, so like Campus Crusade for Christ at the Ohio State University, well, they built a bigger auditorium since, so I don't know what's going on now. When I was there, every Thursday night, they had the largest auditorium on campus, and they didn't pay a dime for it. And at the time, Ohio State had 6 groups, and they would have like forums that would be steeped in scholarship, right, and full of intellectual hollowness. But that they would get money from the Ohio Union Activities Board to come and bring them on campus. So it varies a lot campus to campus. So yeah, there's a lot going on, and it's complicated as to whether or not we're a religion. So not going to have that conversation with anybody while our time is still going on. But anyway, it's complicated, and I think there are many ways in which we are very much advancing the mission of the Academy in a very honest and direct way.
Just going to say, well, not to press the philosophical question of whether humanism is a religion, but just wanted to point out that there are very significant legal implications if humanism comes to be seen as one more variant of religion. I mean, I certainly applaud this idea of humanist chaplaincies at a first order, but we need to think through the possible consequences of that. If it succeeds to a certain degree, humanism will come to be seen as just another religious alternative with First Amendment implications, and we need to keep those in mind.
Absolutely. Howard?
I just want to let everybody know the AHA does have what amounts to is a religious arm, and that's the Humanist Society. And we were starting a program last year with SSA to try to partner with them to get people into different campuses. We did get a lot of response from the campuses themselves. But Barry and I have been talking, Greg and I have been talking about see what we can do about getting celebrants and humanist ministers at universities to help see the chaplaincies. And we do have people around the country who we think may be able to help start that out. So if anybody's interested, we do have some programs that are in, I'd say, minor development at this point, but definitely in development.
All right, other questions? George, I think. I'll come back.
Comment. First of all, I've been looking through this setup and running guide, and it is superb. I would hate to start a group without having this. Beautiful job.
Thank you very much, George.
second, do you have a graphic that shows where your organization, what campuses your
Yes,
organization?
we do.
Okay, that would be nice.
Okay, yeah. I would have to, well, just talk or something. I can show it to you guys afterwards. It's on our website too, although it's kind of annoying to get to.
It's out at
It's at our table. Oh, right, yeah. At our booth. So go visit our booth. You have an excuse to go visit the booth now. Yeah, we've got a map of the United States groups, just because it was easier, because we've got all their zip codes, and it was easier to convert those. Anyway, I won't go into the technical details of why it's only the US, but it's only the US that we have now. Yeah.
So I just want to second what some people have been saying about the value of the chaplaincies at Harvard. There's certainly no way that we could achieve the vibrant student community that we have without the continuity and support provided by the chaplaincy. But it raises an interesting question that's sort of linked to the scholarship issue I raised earlier, which is, what is the career path for someone who wants to go into humanist organizing for people of particular scholarly bent who want to do hands-on work in a religious community? They can go to a theological school or a school of divinity and take a degree that will lead them into a position of organizing around their religious beliefs, and doesn't necessarily take them entirely out of the academy either. But for someone who is not religious or is a humanist, that career path seems either not to be existent or to be very, very hazy. So what can you say about that?
For one thing, I think the career path is growing a little bit as we're seeing more and more humanist celebrants and chaplains, but at the same time, these skills aren't unique to humanists. In fact, I've been told that I really should read a guide to organizing religious groups, because a lot of the skills transfer over, and a lot of the skills at grassroots organizing apply to political campaigns as well. I mean, these are good life skills for anybody. If they happen to apply these life skills towards organizing secular groups, that's great. But it's not as though the skills are worthless outside of the context. I really think a great career can be built by starting organizing humanist groups, and if they want something else, which would be a shame, then they can certainly put their skills to use at a different career.
Humanist Institute?
And sure, there's the Humanist Institute, although the Humanist Institute is about 90% philosophy, 10% practical. So, which, I mean, that's important too, so don't mean to denigrate it at all. Way in the back.
Hi, I'm Sarah. I'm the campus organizer at Harvard. Basically, I would say, to answer Jude's question, I have a master's in theological studies from Harvard University School. It's a little bit ironic that I ended up in the job I am in now. So how one gets to this position is a little bit mixed, but I will say that at the chaplaincy now, we are working with Harvard Divinity School to provide a track for the training of humanist chaplains and other people who are interested in organizing humanist initiatives, which is what I do, and I would have been very, very thankful to have gone through that first, as this is the name learn as you go type job for me. But we are very, very proud of that. Our first graduate, he's in the other room, John Figdor. You see him, say hello. He's going to be one of those first people who gets that program off the ground. So we're very excited about that.
Godspeed. Sharon?
I was just going to add, career-wise, this has come up in discussions with a lot of other local leaders, is that local groups are sort of at the very beginning of starting to realize that they can't depend solely on volunteers and to contemplate what it means to hire staff members. And I think that while a lot of the educational aspects of those, scholarly aspects of those are really important, the student leaders that are on the ground now and the leaders that are on the ground now learning this and coming from very much a non-profit management background and learning in the trenches, I think are the ones who are going to be really skilled to get that off the ground.
Cool. Back to you.
Just going to say a lot of these funding problems would go away if we just tithe.
Yeah, well, I was debating whether or not to mention that. That always seems to be a non-starter in this crowd for some funny reason. So, yeah. So anyway.
Yeah. Do most of your groups collect dues of any kind?
I don't know the numbers off the top of my head. Some do, some don't. And it's more than like 5%. I think it's something like maybe a third have dues. We sort of expound on dues. We don't have like a hard line, like you should definitely have dues. But I think dues are a good idea. When they do have dues, by the way, they're usually not very much. I mean, we're talking like $5 for the year or something like that. The dues are not a significant source of income. The thing that we think the dues are good for is to give people, a sense of ownership. to get some skin in the game and be like, you know, okay, you didn't write a check for $1 million, but you know, whatever, you were going to buy a burrito with that $5, and instead, you know, you've joined this organization. So it's something. I mean, it's not where the majority of the money comes from.
I'm an adjunct professor at UALR in Little Rock.
Yeah.
And the Free Thinkers group there is really interested in getting a group started. I've already talked to the campus life people or whatever, and have a packet from them.
Okay.
And I think I have I have to come up with bylaws and 5 students. The students is what I'm not quite sure what to do, how to get them to start.
We can help with both.
Okay.
So we have sample bylaws. I think they finally made it in the guide. I know they're on our website. And in addition to that, we also have a group starting packet. It works for students that want to start groups, but it also works for anybody who's allowed to go onto campus and hang up flyers. And usually, if you ask for permission, you'll get it. And you know, you hang the flyers, just like I said, like you get the Facebook group, the email. When you finally find your first student leader, you can hand over the group running guide. And you know, there's all sorts of goodies to help you find those students. They're there. I guarantee you that they're there. And the trick is reaching out to them and kind of getting them, even just aware, I think is probably enough. I mean, I can't guarantee you anything, but there are definitely students on that campus who would love there to be an atheist group and or humanist group or whatever word you're filling in when I say atheist, and to go and have that. So the only way to get it started is to start talking to people and hanging up flyers, I think. Yeah.
Do you think the reason why the Campus Crusade has 3 people, staff people working for each group on its campus is because that's how much you need, or because they have so much money to promote Christianity and they think that the education system is so important? Either way, we all need to pitch in and help in our movement, but what do you think the answer to that is?
Well, at least one of those 3 is a fundraiser.
Right, there's that. I mean, I guess my opinion on that is that I don't know, and I only care a little. And because, like you said, it sort of doesn't matter, because it's a model that's clearly working. I think that, there is, okay, with our 51-to-1, we already know that things are not always perfect. That we lose groups occasionally, and like the group at ASU that Susan was talking about before, like that was an SSA-affiliated group. I know at least one of the leaders came to our conference in Columbus last year. Did it pay off? Is the group still there now? I don't know, actually. When we had like 60 groups, I could keep track. When we have 205, I'm not as good. And also, Liz is the primary one taking up that responsibility. So.
What happens is they start at the beginning of the year, the school year, full of enthusiasm, and then it kind of fades away if you don't have active involvement with it. And we do have some volunteers from our local chapter who were working with them. I couldn't tell you what the status of that is now.
Okay.
I don't know.
And we've had very kind of, to be really blunt about it, sort of discouraging results between off-campus groups working with campus groups, just because there's usually an age divide, and we wish that didn't matter, kind of does. And there's usually a distance divide, which we found to be a big deal. We've had people organizing off-campus events, and they'll have an event at the coffee shop across the street from the campus, just so close. And they will get no students. But then they will pull some strings, like with a faculty member they know or something like that, and they will have an event that is on campus, and magically some students will actually come to that. And we actually have a couple of web pages on our website all about collaboration, and that could take all day. But anyway, I mean, I think
what you're saying though is that staff is the key, because the local groups aren't that helpful.
Yeah, even though they really, really want to be. I think that staff is absolutely critical. I think that it's not just that they have an extra pile of cash lying around that they don't know what to do with. I mean, they seem to be getting results.
Yeah, I think staff is key. The question is whether 3 staff for every group is key, because that's
what do you have now?
A nice goal.
Remember
1 to 51.
1 to 51.
Right, that's pretty bad.
So I think part of the reason they have so much support is that they have so many enthusiastic people who want to be involved in it. They have the institution, the groundwork that makes it successful. I mean, we're having trouble supporting our groups and 4 staff members. They clearly have the infrastructure built up to support however many thousands of staff members they have. I mean, I hope if we reach a critical mass at some point, we can start spiraling upwards like they have. but at the moment it's just a struggle to get one more staff member.
But it's mostly monetary, right? You need the money.
Yeah.
We think we know what would be effective. We just need to figure out how to fund it in the back.
I love your idea about mobilizing alumni, because as we've discovered in this talk, staff is key, and hiring staff takes money.
Yeah.
Alumni are donor pools.
Yes.
You know, I mean, we are big, walking, throbbing beings of green and everything. The universities and colleges that we graduated from know it. They tap our money. And if they want more of it, they need to understand that we have a voice. I would love to see the Secular Student Alliance do more to reach out to us grown-up, old fogey atheists and humanists and seculars and freethinkers, and try to get us organized by what university we attended as alumni groups. That would be something that I would definitely be interested in supporting, financially as well as with my time.
Okay.
Anyone with me?
Yeah. Yes, I'm with you. We actually have already been talking about this. It always feels weird to give a pitch for like, please fund our fundraising position. But anyway, there's a whole slew of reasons. But we've been talking about that position too. And I didn't focus on it in this talk because the mechanics of like more people on campuses tends to resonate. But I think that you're absolutely right. I think that organizing an alumni program is critical to our long-term growth. And we were talking with, it's Bruce?
Yes.
Yeah, we were talking with Bruce, who works for Apple and is part of Apple Agnostics, is that right? Yeah, and he gave us some awesome ideas. He tells us, much to our shock.
So another option
Yeah.
for the next level is actually within corporations.
Yeah.
We wouldn't be able to get away with that in our company, but.
But you can at Apple.
Corporations have diversity programs.
They do.
They're well funded. At Apple, Microsoft, Intel, Intuit, Google, Yahoo, they all have groups where they have counterpart groups. And at Apple, I started there about 3 years ago, about a year and a half ago. I said, hey, let's do one of those things. And I started my own group at Apple.
Awesome.
And so the connection, I think the next step is really connecting the corporate alumni groups back to the local student groups. There's a huge incentive for corporations to do that because it's part of our university outreach programs. I think I can wheel it into that thing. And so you're going to have two benefits for people to do that at other places as well.
You're also lucky that you work for an enlightened and not backward company.
Yes.
Speaking as an employee of a very socially backward company that doesn't understand university outreach for its own corporate gains, it certainly isn't going to understand them for social reasons.
Yeah.
So yeah, we are excited about getting that done. I mean, again, it's a question of sort of, we've been trying to push that rock up the hill for the past 7 or 8 years. I was talking to Mike Taft. I don't think he's here right now, but he's at the conference. And he used to be on our board of directors back in like 04, maybe early as 03. And he was at the table the other day when we were talking to Bruce, and Mike was like, yeah, we were talking about alumni when I was on the board. And the campus organizing has always been like this really easy to understand, sexier thing that has always been really easy at, we get emails every day, like dozens of emails from student groups. Hey, it's Mike, speaking of the devil. I think we figured something out about you, sir. So anyway, what we need, and I'm really delighted that you're interested in volunteering some time, we've got a listserv. One time we thought the goal of our organization was to create 1,000 listservs. Anyway, and we've actually been talking about that. We actually have a couple of potential donors who are on that list. Well, past donors could be donors again, and who are really interested in helping to organize that sort of a thing. And I think that's definitely part of our path forward, without a doubt. Yeah.
Just a thought that might make your task a little less Sisyphusian.
Yeah.
I've started campus groups and watched them fizzle. And I know that one of the main reasons is that the people who start off the semester so enthusiastic and full of energy, they end up getting weighed down by all of their coursework.
Sure.
And of course, these extracurricular things get pushed aside. And yet it's kind of ridiculous that supporting the humanist movement and getting your college education are conflicting.
Yeah.
And in fact, there's so many neat synergies that could be made. I'm a college professor, and I've never been approached by an organization saying, why don't you have your students do projects that help to educate people about the humanist movement? In other words, why can't students build their humanist secular groups while doing their coursework? There are plenty of faculty members who are philosophically aligned with humanism but need guidance on how to create that kind of synergy.
So one of the things that I feel the SSA can best provide is connections. And I think the people that you need to talk with are the people at the Harvard chaplaincy, because that is exactly what John Figdor and Sarah went through. They did get college credit, so far as I understand. I know John did, I don't know, you did too? Yeah, they did get college credit for doing humanist organizing at Harvard. And that was in the context of a divinity school, which is like an extra weird thing, but like, whatever, it worked and it happened. So you guys need to get in touch and share your memes and, and do something awesome, and continue doing something awesome, and tell us about it. We'll put it in our newsletter. Our newsletter, by the way, you can sign up for it online. It's the Empirical. It comes out monthly-ish. And everybody, it's free. Sign up. You can sign up on our website, or you can sign up at our booth. So we got 2 minutes left. So that sounds like one more question.
Or none.
Or none. Do you have your no? Okay. All right. Well, thank you so very much for coming. We really appreciate it.